Hello again. So now that we've covered 1-point perspective, I'm going to talk a little bit about 2-point perspective. And this is where, things are getting a little bit more complicated, but if you have a good grasp on how 1 point works, this should be a little bit easier. So what's the difference between 1 point and 2 point, other than the fact that there's more points? And it really has to do with the object you're drawing and how it looks in relation to you. So you remember when we talked about our 1 point perspective, and when we're drawing something that's in 1 point perspective, it has a front face that is parallel to you. And that's when you use 1 point perspective, when you're looking at an object that is parallel to you like this and you have a side that is exactly straight on. But let's say you're looking at an object like this. Remember, there's no front face. The closest thing to us is now an edge. It's not the front. So when we're looking at an object like this we're going to need 2 points to draw accurately in perspective. And you can even kind of see it here with this little version. It gets more distorted, I think, more obvious the closer I get. But if we look at this here, what's happening is, see these two sides? These are actually at an angle, and they're coming along. Let me go like this. So they're at an angle. They're coming along, and they're actually going to converge at a point over here. And this side, because they're at an angle, if we were to draw a line out, they would converge over here. So to draw these two sides that are at an angle from us, we need 2 separate points. So that's when we're using a 2-point perspective. No longer have a front face, we have an edge that is nearest to us. So, 2-point perspective. We know we are going to start with a horizon line, just like we did before. Works in the same way. Horizon line is going to be horizontal or our eye level, remember. Horizon line, eye level will be horizontal. And then we're going to have 2 points, hence why it's called 2-point perspective. One on the left, one on the right. One may be called, I'll probably call it left vanishing point. The other could be the right vanishing point. Or we could call it vanishing point 1, vanishing point 2. Either way, it's talking about, the same thing. It's our vanishing points. Just trying to differentiate that they're 2 different things. So as I showed you here with my little cube, the first thing we're going to draw is no longer going to be the front face. It's going to be this edge, because that's now the closest thing to us. So every time you're drawing in 2-point perspective, the first thing we start with is this edge. And the reason we start with this edge is because, first of all, it's the closest thing to us, but this is really what's going to determine everything. It determines the true height of our object. So this will be the actual height of it, and every other line, is going to get smaller because it's converging back to the vanishing points. So this is the one line that we need to start with. So if I was to draw this out again, like all the other boxes I've been drawing so far, the past week or so, all the ones I've been drawing have really been in 2-point perspective. And they all start with this edge. Okay, so if I was to draw this out, I'm gonna do a little tiny demo here. Now I would recommend drawing this out. Hopefully you guys should be taking notes. Hopefully you're drawing these things out as I'm going, but this one in particular, I would really draw out because this is gonna help you understand. So we start with a horizon line. Gonna start with our 2 vanishing points, and I'm just gonna put these down arbitrarily here. I'll get into figuring out where to put them, but for right now, for this little demo, I'm putting them here. And we're going to start by drawing the front edge of our object. So I'm gonna start in the middle. I'll draw my front edge of my cube here. And then we need to figure out the sides. So to do that, we follow from just like we were doing in 1-point perspective. We have our vanishing point that all our lines converge with. That does not change. The only difference is there's more points you need to converge to. So we'd go like this, we go like this, and then we figure out, how long is our cube. And we get one side, and then we can have our other side. And there we go. And because this is on the horizon line, we're not going to see the top or bottom. Same thing as 1 point perspective. Those rules don't change around here. And then if we're going to draw something above the horizon line, I'm going to start with our front edge, because this will give you our top and bottom. Start with our converging lines to our vanishing point. Okay, and once I've done that, I'm not going to go to the other side yet. I'm going to do this side. And so I'll line it up with the other one I made before. So this is this side. We figured out one side of the cube. Now, we're going to need the bottom, but to do that, you know, we have to do the sides first. So I'm going to do this side too. Excellent. We'll draw this edge. So now we have the two sides, and because it's above the horizon line, remember we're going to see the bottom of the cube. So we need to figure out where the bottom is, and now that we figured out this corner, we know that this is the corner that's going to converge back to this horizon line. Excellent. And to figure out the back one, we got to go back to the other corner. And there we go. So we figured out that this is what the bottom of our cube looks like. Excellent. And then let's draw one more here, just for the sake of it, so you guys can really understand how this goes. Starting with our closest edge to us. Gonna draw converging lines. Let's find our back edge. I'll just line it up with these two to keep things easy. And then this side, figure out where this edge is. Now, because this is below the horizon line, we're going to see the top of the box. So we're essentially doing the same thing we did up there. Find where this corner is, because this corner will go back. And then this corner will go back. And there we go. We can now see the top of our cube. And this is how two-point perspective works. So essentially the same thing, we've just slightly turned our box so we have one more point to deal with. It'll take a little bit more time because we're gonna see more sides of our objects, but that's okay. So one of the important things we do need to talk about is where these vanishing points go, because you do have to keep that in mind. If you put them too far apart or too close together, it can make your drawing look a little bit off. So, spacing of vanishing points is what I want to talk about. So when it comes to the spacing of the vanishing points, let's imagine our page. So if this is our piece of paper that we're working on, you know, when we were working before, well, we start with our horizon line, and then your first question is, where do my vanishing points go? Now, two-point perspective works best when the vanishing points are actually pretty far apart. And that's just how the world works. Because these angles are at a 90-degree from each other, like the two sides of the square here, they're at a 90-degree angle. This is where the vanishing points are going to go out to. They're going to go out to an area that's pretty far apart. So chances are, if you're drawing an object, a pretty large object on your page here, chances are if your vanishing points are on the page itself, like we can see the vanishing points, that's probably too close together. So if these are my two vanishing points, and I drew a cube here, and connected my vanishing points, and then did this, chances are, see that edge there? They're just so close together that it doesn't quite feel right. Because, you know, this is what our box looks like. Our box has a 90-degree edge, and if you put the points too close together, what's happening is this edge doesn't look like it's 90 degrees. What is really going to happen is it looks like it's more like that, like it's been pinched together. Now, the other problem is if you put them too far apart. And honestly, that doesn't really happen that often. Usually people put it too close together because they feel defined by their paper, but it is a thing that can happen. So let's draw our page here. And the other option is, if this was our page, and we put our one vanishing point like all the way over here, and the other one like all the way, you probably couldn't even see, maybe you could see where I put them. Chances are if you were to draw your cube in this, kind of like imagining it would go like this, that would go like that. These lines would be so far apart that the sides of your objects almost look like they're parallel to you. And it makes your object look like it's flat. This is the 90-degree angle we want. But really what it's looking like is that this side is more like that. It's like 100, let's say 150 degrees. So you really want to be careful of being too far apart. As I said, that's usually very hard to do. It is hard to make your points too far apart because honestly it's much more inconvenient. More proper way, if this was your page, and this is your horizon line, chances are something more like this will look more accurate. And it's going to feel more like we have that right angle. This looks like a right angle-ish here. And we got our object here in the middle. And we draw out our sides. And this is just going to feel a little bit better. Now, okay. Now, I know the question that's going to come up is like, well, how do I know? How do I know if it's too close together? Or how do I know if it's too far apart? And honestly, it really comes down to kind of our inner eye. I mean, you guys, chances are you might be in your early 20s, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, depends who we have here. But chances are you've probably been here maybe around 20 years. And if you've been here that long, you've been on the earth, existing in the world this long, your brain has an idea of how the world works. It knows what feels right. It knows what feels wrong. Like if you've ever watched like a bad animated movie, like a 3D animated movie, if you look at like some of the older ones, and something doesn't look right. Or even the newest Star Wars movie, or one of the recent Star Wars movies, when they tried to make, there was a character, the actor had died, and they tried to make a complete 3D version of this character. And it looks great, they did a really good job, but we all know it's 3D animation. We know there's something not quite right about it. And that's because we have this, time we've been spent existing in the world, and we know what feels right and we know what feels wrong. So chances are you're gonna have a little nagging feeling if something is right or wrong. It'll take you some time to figure it out what's right or wrong if this is new to you, but you'll probably have a feeling. And honestly, it just comes down to practice. Playing with how far apart your vanishing points are, and to really figure out what would be the best size and distance for them. And after you do it a bunch of times, you'll just feel better about it. You'll have a better idea of where we're going. So just things to keep in mind. I'll probably tell you where to put your vanishing points. Usually what I do is if I have a drawing or I have a piece of paper, let me get a small piece of paper here. Usually what I'm doing, if this is my drawing page, an 8.5 by 11 paper, I would take it and put it on top of a bigger page and then put the vanishing points somewhere off the sides. So if you have like really big paper, like 18 by 24 paper, this will make your life easier because then you just take this page, tape it down, and then you can put your vanishing points very far off the edges here because chances are it's going to be pretty far out. So we will get to that even more, but this is really the basics to 2-point perspective. And just to recap, when we're using 2-point perspective, when we're drawing an object that is at an angle to us, we see that corner, whether or not it's down here, and we see that corner, we can see the top of it and the side. Up here, same thing, bottom, sides, but this corner is always facing to us. And it doesn't matter if it's like this, or this, or this. Once you get here, where it's straight on, then you're at 1-point perspective again. But any point where it's turned to us and no longer parallel to us, that's when we have 2-point. Okay,